Hello, it's Jordan here from Artisan Electrics. Welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, welcome. I hope you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out. So today I'm going to be changing this consumer unit. It's a bit of a bodge. It was done quite recently and it wasn't done properly. So what I'm going to be doing is taking this one out and putting in a new Hager RCBO consumer unit with an integral surge protection device so that everything's compliant with the 18th edition. But what I want to show you now first of all is how we go about isolating this so that we can safely work on it. And it's a bit of a tricky one because if an installation doesn't have a main isolator switch provided by the D&O, then you don't really have a choice but to pull the main fuse here. So in this case that's what I'm going to have to do. Now it's not sealed, so it's easy enough for me to just pull it out, and then that will isolate the whole installation so that it's safe for me to work on. So I'm just going to show you the safe isolation procedure that I use to carry this out, and I do so using these two things. So this is the Q-Tech KT1780 GS38 compliant test leads, and I use this, which is a Q-Tech Q-Prove 3, as the proving unit to check to make sure that my tester is working properly. So I'll run you through the safe isolation procedure process, and let me know in the comments if I've missed anything out, because I'm not perfect and sometimes I do make mistakes. But basically the idea is to be able to turn everything off so that we can be sure that it's dead. We can prove that it's dead so that it's safe for us to work on. Now in this case, what I'm going to do first of all is just turn off all the circuit breakers one by one. I usually press the test button on the RCDs as well, just to check that the RCDs are working okay. Turn off all the circuit breakers first before turning off the main switch. Right? So that main switch is off now, all the circuit breakers are off. So there's no load. The reason I've turned all the circuit breakers off first is so that there's no load when you're turning off the main switch, because if you turn off the main switch fully loaded, it's not great for it, to be honest. So I've turned off everything there. So technically all of the outgoing circuits that going out from the consumer unit now should be dead. But how do I know that? Well, what I need to do is check. So I've got my Q-Tech Q-Prove unit here, and what I can do is use this first of all as a known source of power to prove that my GS38 test leads are actually working properly. And with the Q-Tech unit, you press and hold it and it runs through all the various voltages until you get to that setting. So that is good. I know that my tester is now working okay. That's the idea of the Q-Tech Q-Prove unit. But of course, before I open this cover up, what I need to do is pull the main fuse so that the main tails are also dead, so that there's actually no power at all going into this consumer unit. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to pull this main fuse, and you can hear the meter has stopped. So in my mind, I know that it's dead, but I want to be absolutely sure and prove that it's dead. So I'll take the cover off, and then we'll run some tests using my GS38 test leads just to make sure that it's definitely dead before I start ripping all the cables out. This is really important because at the end of the day, as electricians, we are working with a dangerous and powerful thing, which is electricity, and we could take it for granted. We could get a little bit comfortable with working around electricity and maybe take it for granted, and that's dangerous because it only takes one shock to kill you, you know? I personally haven't had a shock since I was about 22, I think. So that's like 12 years ago. Basically, I think just after I was qualified, I had a bit of a belt in someone's loft. No, actually, I think it was before I was qualified. I remember. I worked on a junction box that I thought was dead. Opened it up, started pulling out the wires, and it wasn't dead because it was fed from a different circuit to what I thought. I got a belt, and I remember shouting, "Ah!" like that, really loud, because it scared the hell out of me. And I remember the customer coming underneath the loft hatch to where I was working, going, "Is everything okay?" And I went, "Oh yeah, it's fine. Yeah, no problem at all." I just tried to pretend like I hadn't made any stupid mistake, which I had because I didn't want to worry the customer. But that could have been bad, you know. I mean, it was a lighting circuit. It was on a 6-amp breaker. I don't think it even tripped the breaker. Actually, I sort of just jumped away from it, and I don't think it even tripped the breaker. But that could have killed me, you know, if I had, you know, if the circumstances were slightly different. For example, if I'd been touching with, you know, 2 hands, or I touched the junction box with 1 hand. If I'd been touching earth with the other hand, the power would have gone straight across my chest through my heart, and that could have stopped my heart, you know. So that's why I'm so careful now. And I know that people have seen some of my videos where I've maybe been rushing a little bit, and I haven't been following safe isolation procedure in the videos. But in general, this is the way it should be done, and that's why I wanted to show you this video today, to show how it should be done and how I try to do it as much as I possibly can. So we've pulled the main fuse here, so now technically these tails should be dead, everything in here should be dead, but how do I know? So what I do is I prove my tester using my proving unit to make sure that the tester is working for sure, right? So I'm going to run through that again, just run through all the voltages, fine, the tester's working good. So then what I want to do is test to make sure the actual cables coming in here, the tails, are dead. So you're supposed to put the probe onto the least dangerous terminal first. And the reason for that is that if I put the probe on the live terminal first, and then I was touching this, actually the power would go through and into me. So you have to be careful with that. So I'm going to put it on the earth terminal first, and then the live. And that means it's dead. Then I'm going to go to the neutral. So neutral to earth, no power, and then live to neutral, and that's dead as well. So now we can be confident that there's no power coming into this board. But now before I can be 100% sure, what I need to do is prove my tester again to make sure that my tester hasn't just broken when I was moving it up to test the board, and actually, you know, it could be that my tester's broken and it wasn't, but that's all good. So my tester works fine. That means that this is dead, it's safe to work on, I've proved it's dead. Now usually what we should do is lock the circuit off. Any circuit that we isolate, we should lock it off so that nobody can come along and turn it back on. Now in the case of a fuse like this, what I do is just put the fuse in my pocket, and that way there's no way somebody can come along and just plug it back in, because if I just left it lying around here, any old person could just come along and plug it back in again. Now the site that I'm working on, I'm working alone. There's nobody else around, so I can be confident that nobody's going to come in and do that. But a lot of electricians work on commercial sites where there's other maintenance electricians around, or maybe they're working on building sites where there's other electricians around. And in those kind of situations, locking off is really important. And you can even get a multi-lockout. So if several people are working on one circuit, then you've got this like locking hasp with several holes that you could put several padlocks on. So each electrician has his own padlock. And then only when the last electrician has finished working on the circuit and it's safe to turn on again, can the locking hasp be removed. So I just thought I'd show you that safe isolation procedure. It's very important. Some people do take it for granted, especially maybe domestic sparks like myself, who are mostly working alone, and therefore they feel more confident that nobody's going to turn anything back on usually. But it's still important to follow safe isolation procedure because it saves lives. So I'm going to start ripping out this consumer unit now. I'll put it on a time lapse and then we'll get going. Right, so that's all. Oh man, this board is so loose, it's really dodgy, so I'm going to have to fix this back because the whole meter's on here and everything in the main supply cable. So I'm going to just fix that back now. I've got the old consumer unit ripped out, so that's good, and I'm going to just mount the new one up now. Hopefully it'll fit in there, otherwise I'll have to move this board down slightly, get the new Hager board in with the rear cable entry as much as possible, and then just tidy up all this mess. The board, just disassembling the old board, it just made me realise even more how much of a bodge it was. A lot of the MCBs were kind of broken already, like the clips on the bottom weren't there and stuff like that. It's just a complete mess, to be honest, and the way he's terminated the cables and everything, just a complete bodge. So it's really good that I'm going to get this all sorted out and tidy it up properly. It's going to be much better. So this is the new Hager consumer unit that I'm putting in, and I know that a few of you, well, all my regular subscribers, you've probably seen me fit one of these before, but just for the sake of the new subscribers and viewers, I thought I'd just open this up and show you what's inside a Hager RCBO SPD consumer unit, because they're quite lovely bits of kit, these things. So you've got hashtag Hager Gang. That's the sort of a social media thing that Hager run, where when you do an install, post it on social media, a picture of it with hashtag Hager Gang, and they have regular competitions. So it says take a photo of your installation, be creative, tweet to Hager at Hager UK using your photo, hashtag Hager Gang, and then step 3, get yourself a free Hager Gang t-shirt, which I've got one. And I've also got the screwdrivers. I've won the Hager Installer of the Month competition several times. I've got the screwdrivers. They sent me a beer bottle opener the other day, which is really cool. Yeah, I've won quite a lot of Hager stuff actually. And the cool thing about it is that this is unique. You can only get this by winning the Hager competition. They don't sell them or anything, so they're kind of like limited edition really. They're a bit like a sort of... it's like a badge of honour using these screwdrivers because it shows that you've won the competition. So yeah, anyway, inside here, this is the little cable entry plate for the tails. So they have these square knockouts and you can just clip that in, and then the tails and the earth go through there. So here's the board. I'll just get rid of the box and then I'll show you. Ouch. So they're constantly sort of improving these boards, and one of the things that they've done recently is that they've put the torque settings on this sticker now. This is a VML 118 SPD. So how the product code works is VML is the type of consumer unit, and then 118 indicates it's an 18-way with an SPD. So 120, for example, would be the 20-way if you don't have an SPD. But they also do dual RCD boards, they do non-SPD boards, stuff like that. But for me, this is my standard go-to board now. So I always install main switch, RCBOs, SPD. And the nice thing about the Hager SPDs is they don't need extra overload protection. They have that built into them, so you don't need a separate MCB for the surge protection device. And they come pre-wired into the board, so they're just easy to to do really, and they're the good quality. Hager, the reason I use them is for the quality really. All their stuff is really good quality. It's solidly built. It's not cheap, but it's solidly built and it's good quality. So you've got these rear oval knockouts here. I'm going to knock those out and use those to take most of the cables in the back. One of the annoying things about Hager boards is they don't have round knockouts. They have these rectangular knockouts, which means that if you want to put compression glands and bring cables in, you have to drill separate holes, like here and here, for example. They do have these plates that you can get that you have to buy separately with it's like a plastic plate that will clip in there with, you can drill a 20mm hole in it, but I don't know how reliable they are really. These are basically designed for installation where you've got trunking, you put trunking above it or something like that. So that's the only little bugbear that I have about the Hager boards, but it does make it easier to take the cables in when you do have trunking, rather than having to knock out loads of the little knockouts or cut the metal open. And on the bottom you've got the same. You've got more blank gaps on the bottom, so you can drill a few 20mm holes in the bottom and bring stuff in the bottom if you want to. There aren't any in the side, either side, so the sides are just smooth. And then, as you can see on the back, you've got these just knock out really easily, so that's quite handy. They supply you with a length of grommet strip here as well, which is quite good quality grommet strip, but today I'm going to try something a bit different. Someone's given me a recommendation on some alternative grommet strip, which I wanted to give that a go, so I'm going to use that today. What I usually do is get the board mounted up, then put the circuits in, put all the RCBOs in, tidy the cables, the neutral tails in. I'm using the mini RCBOs, which are really great because they only have a neutral tail, they don't have a functional earth. So they just clip in there, the neutral tails go into here, and then terminate the cables directly into the top of the RCBO. And the good thing as well about Hager is now they have standard type A RCBOs and RCDs, so they can cope with a bit of DC leakage, which is important. So yeah, gonna just sort of do some measuring up now, do the knockouts, mount the board up, fix that wooden board back so that that doesn't fall off the wall and blow up the main cable, and then we'll be good to go. Right, so what I've decided to do with this is actually, because I'm going to mount the consumer unit directly on the bricks here, I don't actually need a board to space this out. So I'm going to undo the screws, remove these battens that are behind it, which is spacing it out at the moment, cut the board slightly shorter, and then just fix the board directly back to the bricks. That's going to be better, and it's going to give me more space to work with. So I've got to just get these screws out, remove the battens, and then get at least one fixing onto the wall so that it holds it back in place. And then I'll get a few fixings, get it all leveled up and whatever. And then I'll probably just cut it off along the top here with my multi-tool. So that's one batten off. So I'm going to get my drill and screwdriver to the ready. Great, that's nice and solid, so I can just cut this across here now with my multi-tool, and then obviously I need to sort these out. They're a bit tight now, so I'll do that. Let's remove those for the moment. I'll try and terminate them directly into the board, I think. I'll be better, or I just have to extend them or something. Great. Right, so I just want to show you this. I've tried something different today with the grommet strip. I got a tip off from someone on social media. I can't remember who it was, so sorry if I don't credit you. But if it's you, leave a comment and tell us. Basically this stuff, it's not actually grommet strip, it's edge trim for vehicles or something like that. Got it off Amazon, it wasn't expensive, but it's so much better than grommet strip. It's like really solid and nice, and it's got these metal sort of little ringlets in, but it's really flexible. So I've used that here and here and here, and hopefully it's going to be good. The only thing I can see that might be a problem with it is it sticks out quite far from the back, so it might, if I fix the consumer unit back too hard, it might bend the casing slightly. So I'm just going to give it a go and see. But it's definitely much nicer than the grommet strip that they supply with it. I'll show you what it looks like. I'll leave a link in the description for it anyway. It's this stuff. And it's just like really flexible. But it's got these little metal sort of staple type things in, I guess, just to make it a bit more solid. But it's super flexible, and you just cut it to the length that you want and fit it on, and it works really nice. So thanks for the tip off, whoever it was. I certainly appreciate it. So what I've managed to do here, these cables were coming out of here, but I've managed to drill straight up through. There's a bit of trunking above, and then pull them straight down so that they can actually go directly into this hole. And then these ones will come in through this hole, and these ones will come in through this hole. So actually pretty much all my cables are going to be able to come into the back or the top, and therefore be hidden, which is really nice. Then the only ones that will come in the bottom are this one and the tails and the main earth. So that's great. It means it's going to be a much neater job. And I've decided to not actually cut this because I don't really need to, as I don't have many cables coming up in the bottom anyway. This gives me something to fix the tails to when I clip the tails back, so it's quite nice to just have that there really. The board now will just rest just on top of it, which will be perfect. So I'm going to thread all these cables through here now, and then get the board mounted on the wall. So it's a bit tricky threading everything through, and then you've got to get it on the wall, mark it up, then you've got to take it back down again to actually drill the holes, and then put it back up again. So it's a slightly annoying process this really, but it has to be done. The good thing about this grommet strip is it's actually, oh, it's fantastic, yeah, brilliant. So this grommet strip doesn't pull off or anything when you rub the cables past it, which is great. Look at that, that's going to be really nice. So, looks level. I'm not actually going to need to put a level on it because it's got to just be lined up with that wood anyway. So what I'll do is just mark it up with my new Pica pencil. which is really nice, by the way. I actually prefer this pencil to the Pica marker pen, because that tends to just get trashed. This thing, you can just sharpen it up again really easily, so it doesn't matter if it gets blunted, it just comes with a sharpener and you just sharpen it up. So I've got my 4 fixing holes there, there's nothing in the middle, so I'm just going to lever this off the wall slightly, drill my holes, plugs, and then fix that back. And I'll use some penny washers on the screws just to give a bit more of a strong fixing. Situations like this where the arm mag extension bit comes in really handy as well, just when your normal extension bit's not quite long enough. Okay, so I think I'm going to have to cut this board short slightly, because actually it's covering the hole here. I expected the whole board to be a bit further across that way, but it's not. So what I'll do is just trim it off about here somewhere, and that should do the trick. Oh, great. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Right, so fortunately I had some expanding foam in the van. Ideally I would have liked some of the fireproof stuff, but I've not got any of that with me, so I'm just going to use this stuff. I'll fill in that hole, but I'll also fill in this as well, because there's quite a big gap around the cables here, so I'll fill that in and then that'll set while I'm having lunch, and then that'll just seal that hole off, stop any rodents getting in or anything that might happen. This is horrible stuff. I absolutely hate expanding foam. It's one of the nastiest chemicals that we work with as electricians, but sometimes needs must. It's very hard to judge how much expansion to allow for, because you've got to fill the hole, but this really does blow up a lot and you don't want it coming into the consumer unit really, so you've got to leave it set back a little bit. You can always cut it off afterwards once it's dry, but it's not nice to work around it when it's wet. It's horrible stuff. So I've sort of left it set back about an inch. Hopefully that will be fine, but we'll see. So what I'm going to do now is strip all these cables back, cut them all, trim them all to a nice length, put the earth sleevings on and everything, get the RCBOs in and terminated into there, and then terminate all these cables in one by one. I think it's going to give me an opportunity to do a nice neat job on this one. It's not often they go this well, so quite pleased really. I've got to do the knockout here as well and drill a 20mm hole for this cable and put a stuffing gland in, so I'll do that now before I forget, and then I can get the tails in before I start doing anything else, because the tails are big and chunky and they're really hard to work with and to terminate in properly if you've got loads of cables and stuff in the way, so I usually try and do the tails first. So for the tails, I've got one of these whisker tail entry glands, which I prefer to use if possible. It just gives a nice neat finish, and it, you know, grips the tails nicely. So I'm going to drill, I've got one of these arm egg hole saws, a 40mm. I'm going to drill myself a 40mm hole in here and then get the tail entry gland in. I got myself one of these the other day. It's basically to just smooth out the hole that when you drill a hole in metal. So I'll give you a little demo of how it works. It's just to get rid of any sharp edges, basically. I can't remember what it's actually called, the name of the tool, but you basically just run it around the edge of the hole, and it's very sharp and it just sharpens, it just takes off any of those sharp edges, and it works on both the inside and the outside of the hole. Very, very nice little tool. So it just makes it nice and smooth. That's ideal if you've got a situation where the hole's going to be more accessible. That's great, that's super smooth now. Obviously in this case it's protected by the gland anyway, but I just think it's good practice if you've got it to do it, and it avoids you cutting your finger on the hole as well when you're putting the gland in or anything, so it's quite nice. Again, I'll leave a link in the description for all these tools, because I know that you guys like seeing new tools, and you always ask me in the comments like, where did you get that tool from? Where can I buy one? Can you send me a link? So I just put links in the description for all those kind of things automatically, and then if you ever like wonder about a particular tool that I've been using, usually if it's featured quite prominently in the video, then I will have put a link in the description to where you can buy it. This is another amazing little tool that I can't really live without now. The Nipex Ergo Strip is an absolutely amazing thing. So tails, these are the flexi tails. So if you see that, they're fine stranded, well not fine stranded, but quite fine, and that makes them super flexible. So they're like just amazingly flexible compared to the stiff old tails like this that we used to use. So it's quite a nice little thing to have these. It just makes it easier to run the cables in. Like that, and then with my Ergo strip, all I have to do is do that. There we go. Same with this one. Take off one layer, take off the other layer. So I'll get the live one in first. And it just bends in nicely like that. What I do with these is I tighten them up sort of loosely, as in not as tight as it should be, and then at the end I go over and I go over everything with my torque screwdriver to make sure that I've got the right torque on everything, because again the manufacturer's instructions state that these things should be installed to a specific torque setting. So that's that. So that's my two tails in. Nice neat loop. I'll pull them back slightly. You've got to be careful about the bend radius of these obviously, but that bend radius is absolutely fine. And then I've got my 16mm earth here, which has to go in the same and run into the main earth terminal. So again, in this whisker gland there's a hole which is designed for a 16mm earth. Just got to find it. There, but it doesn't. There we go. So we'll tuck this at the back behind the tails and then just gently bend it across like that. It doesn't need much length on it, just enough to go into the first terminal, which is the one that's designed for the main earth, so that will do. Yeah, something like that. Got to leave enough at this end to get to the main earth terminal, but that's plenty, so I can actually push a bit more in here, and then that'll be tucked up and just kind of hidden behind there, which is always nice. And I might just remove this neutral. Put it in front of that. There you go. So then that can go right behind. And again, ergo strip will do this quite nicely. Like that. And then I've got my Barco shears just to shear it off to a nice neat length. Okay, so that's all the tails and the main earth. in, and I'll connect them into the meter at the end. So no rush on that really. So now I can start mounting the RCBOs. First I might strip all these back because it's going to be easier to do it now than it is once the RCBOs are in. Now there's no great way to strip these really, because you can't get one of those CK wire stripper tools in there. One thing that I do have, which is quite good for twin and earth, is this Jokari all-rounder, because it's designed for flat twin and earth. So what you can do with it is get quite close to the sort of the back, as far back as you can, and then I still just use the earth to strip it back, but at least when you reach that nick that you've made, it should just tear around quite nicely, so it makes a neater, there we go, a neater finish. When you strip it, you've got a nice flat finish there, which is about the best that you can get in this kind of situation really. Let me know if you've got an alternative solution, of course. I'm always learning off this channel. You guys come up with some amazing ideas sometimes. Things that I would just never think of, but actually you've been doing it for years and it works great, you know? So that's what I love about this platform really.